a metal shard, inside his food, put there on purpose. The chef handpicked who got that meal, only the low-wage kitchen staff. The servers got sandwiches. What he didn't know, the new server at the table was the owner of the restaurant. There is a photograph on the wall of Keanu Reeves' office that nobody ever comments on. Small, slightly crooked. A 19-year-old boy standing behind a diner counter in Toronto, holding a tray of coffee cups with both hands, wearing a collared shirt 2 sizes too large. His shoes are worn at the toes. He is smiling the careful smile of someone who really needs the tips. That boy bussed tables, washed dishes, worked short-order lines in kitchens that smelled of grease and old coffee. He carried plates to people who spoke over him, past him, through him, as though he simply were not there. He learned what it felt like to be invisible. And he learned something else, that a hot meal, served with basic dignity, can do more for a tired person than most people ever stop to notice. That knowledge stayed with him long after the money arrived. 3 years ago, he purchased a struggling restaurant chain in Chicago. For locations, nothing glamorous. The kind of places where construction workers ate lunch and families came on Friday nights without thinking too hard about what things cost. He called it the hearth and table. When he finalized the deal, he gave the management team one instruction: not about margins, not about branding, just this: every person who walks through that door gets treated the same. $8 special or $28 entree. Same service. Same respect. That was the only thing he said he would never negotiate on. For 2 years, it seemed to work. It was a Wednesday morning in October when his assistant, Nessa Cole, set a folder on his desk with the particular care of someone placing something fragile. "You asked me to flag anything unusual in the complaint reports," she said. He opened it. 9 formal complaints. 1 location. 5 months. 3 hospitalizations. He looked at the summary for the other 3 locations combined. 2 complaints in the same period. He looked up at Nessa. She nodded before he said anything. He read through the cases slowly. Severe nausea. 1 elderly woman kept overnight. 1 man with an allergic reaction who had no prior history. And at the bottom, a name he kept returning to: Dale Mercer. 58 years old. Electrician. Admitted to the emergency room after dinner on a Thursday night. Missed 11 days of work. No paid sick leave. Keanu set the folder down and looked out the window. Then he picked up the phone. Wendell Foss, the Elmwood manager, answered with the voice of a man who had been expecting the call and already decided how to handle it. Smooth, a little too prepared. He used phrases like difficult customers and pre-existing conditions. When Keanu asked what had been done about Dale Mercer, 11 days, no sick pay, Wendell mentioned a gift card and a complimentary dinner. Dale had not responded. Keanu thanked him and hung up. Dialed the kitchen directly. "This is Gareth." Gareth Sloan had been head chef at Elmwood for 18 months. Strong resume. Great references. Under his management, the location's profit margins had climbed to the highest in the chain. His voice on the phone had the confidence of someone who had never been seriously questioned. Keanu introduced himself, said he was reviewing the complaints, kept his tone open. Gareth did not disappoint. "The people filing these complaints are a type," he said. "They order the cheapest thing on the menu, sit for an hour and a half, send something back twice, then look for an angle. I handle that kind of customer the way any experienced chef handles them. I make sure they are dealt with." A brief silence. "Dealt with," Keanu repeated. "Professionally managed." A slight adjustment in tone. "Your profit margins at Elmwood are the best in your chain right now. That doesn't happen by accident. It happens because I don't let problem customers drag the experience down for everyone else." "What does handling them look like, exactly?" Gareth gave a short, easy laugh. "Making sure they don't come back and cause more trouble. That's what good kitchen management is." Keanu thanked him, hung up, and did not move from his desk for a while. He looked at the folder. He looked at the photograph on the wall. Then he opened his laptop and searched his email archive, filtering backward through months by location, by complaint. Nothing. He was about to close the window when something made him check one more place. The spam folder. The email was 6 weeks old. Subject line, "Please read urgent about Elmwood kitchen.
Sender, Kaden Pruitt.
Mr. Reeves, I don't know if this will reach you, but I have to try. I'm a prep cook at your Elmwood location. What's happening in this kitchen is not right and people are getting hurt. Gareth Sloan targets specific customers, the ones who complain, the ones who send food back. The staff all know it, but no one says anything because we're afraid. I have documentation. Please, if someone can help, please respond." He clicked reply, typed 4 words. "I'm here. Can you talk?" His phone rang 40 seconds later. The voice on the other end was young and doing its best to sound steady. They talked for 45 minutes. Caden described a kitchen where incoming meat failed temperature checks and got used anyway, where food dropped on the floor got plated and served, where certain customers were quietly targeted, categorized as problems, flagged for consequences. New staff were coached. The ones who pushed back found their hours cut until they left. "Do you have proof?" Keanu asked. 5 videos. I can send them right now." They arrived 3 minutes later. Keanu watched each one. Gareth spitting into a plated dish before it went out. Gareth picking up a steak off the floor, wiping it on his apron, putting it back on the plate. Gareth speaking quietly to a new hire. "Some customers come here looking for a problem. You let me handle it. I handle it in a way they remember." And the last one. Gareth alone at a prep station at 5 in the morning, working over a large pot, pausing, looking over both shoulders, reaching into the front pocket of his chef's coat and adding something to the contents. Stirring slowly, looking around once more, continuing as though nothing had happened. The pot contained the filling for a batch of pot pies. Keanu closed the laptop, sat in the quiet of his office, thought about Dale Mercer, 58 years old, 11 days without pay, a gift card he never accepted. He called Caden back. "I'm coming in myself, not as the owner. I need to see what happens when no one thinks anyone important is watching." A pause. "My name will be Ken Walsh." Silence. Then, "He's good at reading people. Be careful. Thank you, Caden, for sending that email, for not giving up on it." He built a simple resume that night. Ken Walsh, 48, 12 years front of house at a Milwaukee restaurant, now closed. He called his attorney, walked through the legal parameters under Illinois law, and sat alone for a moment before going to bed. He looked at the photograph one more time. He did not look like the owner of anything. Dark khaki pants washed too many times to hold their shape. A pale blue polo faded at the collar. Flat-soled shoes with real scuff marks. No watch. No rings. He parked the rented Honda Civic 2 blocks away and walked the rest of the distance with his hands in his pockets. Because he had done this particular walk many times before. Wendell Foss scanned the resume for 30 seconds, asked 2 questions and said, $12 an hour, 6 to 2. Keep your head down. That was the entire interview. Inside, a server named Lena showed him the floor layout with efficient kindness. Then, at 6:15, the atmosphere changed. No announcement. Just a shift in the air, the way pressure drops before weather. Gareth Sloan walked in, tall.
Chef Escote Immaculate.
He moved through the kitchen the way people move through spaces they believe belong entirely to them. He stopped at the protein station and told Aurelio Mack, without changing his expression, that his cuts were uneven and he would stay late. Aurelio said, "Yes, chef," and began again. Gareth moved on without acknowledging the response. He stopped at the service station, looked at Keanu, for seconds of assessment. Ken Walsh. That's right. You know what front of house means here? Dining room experience starts and ends with me. Food out right, table taken care of, nobody asks twice. A beat. Here it also means you don't editorialize. Anything you can't solve, you come to me. Not Wendell. Me. He paused. Clear. Clear. One more second. Then Gareth walked to his office. Keanu watched everything. Not the food, the culture. The way Solange Vidal's knife slowed when Gareth passed her station. The way Aurelio carried his shoulders slightly higher than a person at ease. Small things. The kind you only notice if you have spent enough time in rooms where the wrong kind of authority has made itself comfortable. The first violation came that morning. A delivery of chicken arrived reading 52 degrees. Protocol required under 40. Caden flagged it immediately. Gareth said, "Use it," without looking up, and when Caden started to cite health code, Gareth said his name once, quietly, the way a door closes in cold weather. Caden carried the box to the walk-in without another word. The second came the following day. A table sent back a steak. Too rare, they had ordered well done. Gareth asked what else they had complained about. Lena mentioned a wait time, mentioned she recognized the woman from a previous visit. Something settled in Gareth's face. Cold. Quiet. He took the plate to his workstation, turned his back, bent over it for approximately 8 seconds. Then he finished the steak in the salamander, added fresh garnish, wiped the rim, and sent it out with complete professionalism. 20 minutes later, Lena returned. Pale. They say it tastes wrong. Bitter. They're asking for the check. Some people have no palate, Gareth said, and moved to the next ticket. Across the kitchen, Caden caught Keanu's eye for less than 2 seconds. It was enough. That afternoon in the back alley, Caden smoked and looked at the middle distance. Then, without turning, "You're not just a server." Keanu said nothing. This morning, table 4 knocked over a water glass. You cleaned it up before Lena turned around. Nobody asked you to. A slow drag. And you watch Gareth like you're keeping score. Not the way the rest of us watch him. A pause. Traffic somewhere on the next block. "I need one more day," Keanu said. Caden ground the cigarette out against the wall. Looked at him directly for the first time. "You have until tomorrow morning." He held out his phone briefly, a screenshot showing a location in the walk-in cooler. Behind the milk crates. Back wall. Then he put it away. "You'll know what to do with it," he said, and went back inside. The next afternoon, during the lull between services, Keanu went into the walk-in with a clipboard. Worked methodically from the front shelving toward the back. Behind a stacked row of milk crates, his hand closed around something that did not belong. A notebook. Black cover. The binding worn soft with handling. The entries were in small, precise handwriting. Coded. Initials, a complaint type, a method number. DM. Comp request. Return visit, M3. RH allergy inquiry. Sent item back, M1. He turned through the pages. 28 entries. 16 months. A neat, unbroken line. Not negligence. Not a pattern that drifted. Something designed. Something maintained. He photographed every page. On the shelf above, a box of latex gloves. Opened, several pairs already missing. He photographed that too. The cooler door swung open. Gareth stepped in. Keanu had a container of butter in his hand, turning it as though checking the date. "Everything good in here?" "Just checking stock for dinner prep." Gareth looked around, then at Keanu, something almost like approval. "That's the kind of initiative I like." He picked up a container of cream, turned for the door. "Good work," he said, and let it fall shut. Keanu stood in the cold a moment longer than necessary. That evening, Gareth held a staff meeting at the pass. He talked about Saturday volume, about mistakes and drama, about certain customers, people who ordered from the bottom of the menu, sat too long, sent things back. "That type of customer is not our customer," he said, voice steady, almost conversational. "When I say I will handle a situation, I mean exactly that. You cook, you serve, you let me manage the rest." Nobody spoke. Solange looked at the floor. Aurelio's jaw was set. Caden stared at a fixed point above Gareth's head. After closing, Caden passed Keanu at the server station. Barely a murmur. "I sent you something. Check it when you get home." 5 o'clock this morning. Keanu drove 4 blocks and pulled over. 43 seconds of footage. Early morning light. Gareth alone at the prep station. At 31 seconds, he paused, looked right, looked left, reached into the breast pocket of his chef's coat, added something to the pot, stirred slowly, looked around once more, continued as though nothing had happened.
Pot be a feeling.
Keanu sat in the parked car for a long time. Across the street, a laundromat was still lit. A man alone in a plastic chair, watching a dryer turn, waiting with the quiet patience of someone at the end of a long day. Tomorrow, Gareth would come in early. He would make something. And this time, Keanu would be close enough. He had not slept. At 4:30, he gave up, dressed, and drove to Elmwood in the dark. He parked half a block away and watched the kitchen light come on at 5:03. Then he waited until 5:45 and knocked at the back. The kitchen smelled of butter and rosemary. Something warm had been baking for a while already. 6 ceramic ramekins sat on the break room table in a neat row, golden crust steaming. The smell was extraordinary, the kind that belongs to Sunday mornings and cold weather and cooking done with actual care. Gareth appeared in the doorway at 6:05, arms crossed, satisfied. I came in early, made something for the crew. Good week. You all earned it. He distributed them himself. Caden, Solange, Aurelio, 2 prep workers, Ken Walsh. Lena and the other servers had arrived earlier and picked up sandwiches from the place next door. Nobody offered them a ramekin. Nobody mentioned it. Keanu sat down. He looked at the 5 people at the table, all kitchen staff, all hourly, all on the lower end of the pay scale. Through the pass-through window, he could hear Lena and the others, easy laughter, paper bags rustling. Gareth was still in the doorway. Caden picked up his fork. His eyes met Keanu's for a fraction of a second. Keanu cut into the crust. Steam. Chicken, carrots, peas, cream gravy. He took a bite. Then a second. Something changed in the texture. Wrong. Resilient in a way that food is not. His jaw stopped. His hand came up slowly. He reached in and pulled out a piece of latex. Pale. Soaked through with gravy. Torn at one end. Something inside caught the light. He opened it with a fork. A metal shard fell onto the ceramic. The sound it made was very small. In the silence of that room, it was very loud. The table went still. Stop eating, Keanu said. Everyone stop right now. Forks went down without a word. Solange's hands were trembling against the table. She had eaten most of hers before Keanu found anything. Aurelio stood up abruptly, chair scraping, leaned on both palms, staring down. Solange covered her mouth. Her eyes filled. Where is he? Keanu asked. Office. Or was, Caden said, already moving. Check the back door. Keanu stepped into the hallway. 3 calls in under 2 minutes. Attorney. Inspector Harmon. Building security. Lock every exit. Nobody leaves. From the back of the building, a heavy door opening. Footsteps stopping. Then Caden's voice, very steady. You're not going anywhere. Gareth stood at the rear exit. Backpack on one shoulder. Canvas bag in his other hand. Caden was in front of him, feet planted, arms at his sides. Not touching him. Not raising his voice. Just there. Gareth looked past Caden and saw Keanu coming down the hallway. 3 seconds. Nobody moved. Keanu stopped 2 steps away. He reached into his jacket and removed a folded paper towel. Opened it on his palm. The latex. The metal shard. Gareth looked at it. Then at him. Who are you? I own this restaurant. I've been working your floor for 3 days. He looked at the backpack. And you're not leaving.
Gareth recalculated fast.
His voice found steadiness. The practiced tone of a man who has talked his way out before. All right, you're the owner. Then you know what I've done here. 18 months. Margins up 28%. Highest in your chain. Some customers make that impossible. I managed those situations so your numbers could stay where they are. Keanu was quiet for a moment. You managed Dale Mercer, he said. 58 years old. Came in on a Thursday. Missed 11 days of work. No sick pay. Something moved across Gareth's face. And the 4 people who ate your pot pies this morning. He kept his voice level, unhurried. You increased revenue by 28%. I believe that. I also believe some of it came from paying off the people you hurt, and the ones you couldn't pay off got quietly sick and went away. A pause. That is not a well-run kitchen. That is a kitchen used as a weapon against the exact people this place was built for. Those people were hungry, Keanu said. That's all. They sat down and trusted us with their meal. And you kept a notebook about them. The back door was still open. Cold air moved through the hallway. Gareth glanced at it once, involuntary, brief, then back. There was nowhere to go. Harmon came through the front. 2 officers behind her. And behind them, escorted Wendell Foss, face the color of old ash. He did not look at anyone. Gareth saw Wendell and went completely still. Whatever calculation he had been running behind his eyes stopped. Because Wendell's presence meant the conversation had already moved past anything Gareth could reframe. Harmon took the paper towel, examined the contents, and looked at Gareth. Mr. Sloan, you need to come with us. I want my attorney. Call from the station. The entire kitchen staff had gathered in the hallway. Lena with her notepad. Aurelio, arms crossed. Solange, eyes dry now, face carrying the stillness of someone who has moved through shock and arrived somewhere quieter. Caden standing slightly apart the way he always stood, outside the circle, watching. The officer produced handcuffs. The sound they made was small in the hallway and somehow heavier than everything else. Gareth looked at the people along the wall. People he had corrected and pressured for 18 months. People who had learned to keep their eyes down and their questions to themselves. He looked at them the way a person looks when they need witnesses and find only the people they spent a long time not seeing. Nobody looked away. As the officers guided him toward the front, he turned back once. You're making a mistake. This kitchen ran. It ran well. Keanu looked at him. I know exactly what it costs, he said quietly. I've been paying for it for 16 months. Gareth had nothing to say to that. They walked him out into the morning, into a Chicago street going about its ordinary business. Deliveries, commuters, a city that does not pause for the private disasters inside its buildings. Keanu turned to Lena. Did any pot pies go out during breakfast service? 4. They were on the specials board from 7. For people, somewhere in the city right now, not yet knowing. Get their names from the receipts. Right now. She was already moving. He looked at the staff in the hallway. Your jobs are safe. Every one of you. We're closing for a few days and you'll be paid for that time. A pause. I'm sorry it took this long. Nobody cheered. Solange let out a long, slow breath and closed her eyes. Aurelio unfolded his arms for the first time since he had stood up from the table. Caden looked at the floor, then looked up, and something in his face that had been held carefully in place for a very long time seemed, quietly and without ceremony, to loosen. The Elmwood location stayed dark for 96 hours. By the second day, the count stood at 32 food safety violations. The notebook decoded into 28 entries. Cross-referenced against medical records and complaints, the number of identified victims reached 31 people, each one of them sitting down for what should have been an ordinary meal. Harmon sat across from Keanu on the 3rd evening. This was not a kitchen that drifted into bad habits, she said. This was a system, designed, maintained, adjusted over time. She closed her folder. Whoever built it knew exactly what they were doing. The following morning, Wendell Foss gave his statement. He had known for 9 months. Not the full scope, but enough. He had watched Gareth handle a returned plate and understood it was not a chef correcting a mistake. He had noticed the pattern in the complaints and classified it, each time, as coincidence. And he had accepted money to maintain that classification. An informal bonus. Off the books. When the investigator asked whether he had understood that people were being harmed, Wendell was quiet for a long time. Then he said, I didn't ask. He was charged with negligent enablement and fraud. Gareth's legal team fought hard. Keanu read their statement in his hotel room, called his attorney, and said 3 words, no plea deals. He authorized the full investigative record released to the press. All of it, the decoded notebook, the 5 videos, the list of 31 victims with documented medical outcomes. The story ran nationally within 24 hours. Former colleagues at 2 previous restaurants came forward within days. His food handler certification was suspended. His name went into the federal database. By the time the case concluded, a civil plea, a fine, a permanent ban from licensed food service work in Illinois, his career had been over for months. The gavel was almost beside the point. On the 5th day, Keanu called a meeting. All 4 locations. 81 employees in the Elmwood dining room. He stood at the front without a podium, in jeans and a plain shirt, and opened with a question. How many people in this room have ever seen something at work that didn't seem right? At any job? And stayed quiet because you were afraid? Stillness. Then a hand in the back. Then another. Then slowly more than half the room. He looked at them. The fear is real. I've been in that position. But here is what I want you to understand about what happened in this kitchen. It didn't survive because one person was clever. It survived because silence surrounded it and gave it room. Not malicious silence, mostly. Just frightened silence. The kind that feels like self-preservation and functions like permission. He outlined an anonymous reporting system routed directly to an independent oversight company. No connection to management, protected by contract, automatic external inspection for substantiated reports. He signed the contract in front of the full room. Not as a gesture, because it seemed right that the people it was designed to protect should see it happen. Then he introduced Caden Pruitt. Caden walked to the front, and Keanu could see in his shoulders the particular discomfort of someone not accustomed to being looked at who has decided to tolerate it because the thing being asked of them matters. Caden doesn't have a culinary degree or a resume that fills 2 pages, Keanu said. 6 weeks ago, when this kitchen was doing what it was doing and everyone around him had found a way to live with it, he typed an email at 11 o'clock at night to an address he wasn't sure anyone was reading. He looked at Caden. That is the kind of judgment I want running this kitchen. The applause was uneven and surprised at itself. The sound of people who meant it. Effective immediately, kitchen staff wages up $4 an hour across all 4 locations. The pay gap between back of house and front of house eliminated. 3 senior servers objected privately afterward. He listened without interruption. Then, the food you carry to the table, who makes that? The person whose name nobody in the dining room ever learns. I'm not saying your work doesn't matter. I'm saying value and visibility are not the same thing. One put in her notice the following week. He wished her well. He did not change course. The kitchen renovation completed before reopening, open wire shelving in the walk-in, digital temperature monitoring, full camera coverage, anonymous reporting cards at every station. Harmon returned for the final inspection. 3 hours. When she sat down, she said, "This is the most thorough overhaul I've seen in this city in a long time." She signed the form and slid it across the table. "You're cleared to reopen." 3 weeks after reopening, Keanu walked through the front door at 7 in the morning like any other customer. Dark green hoodie, baseball cap, same worn shoes he had worn as Ken Walsh. He ordered black coffee and wheat toast from a server he did not recognize. Sat at a corner table and watched. Caden was at the pass, checking each plate before it left with the quiet attention of someone who understood what the gesture meant. Solange and Aurelio were talking about something that made them both laugh. Easy, unguarded, the laughter of people not afraid of being heard. A new hire named Marcus knocked a knife off the counter, clattered to the floor. He froze, face going through the expression of someone bracing for a consequence they had learned to expect. Caden looked over. "You okay?"
Sorry, chef.
"Pick it up, wash it, grab a fresh one. And next time, let it fall. That's how people keep their fingers." Marcus carried the knife to the sink. His shoulders came down on the way back. At the morning meeting, Caden held up his phone. "I want to read something. Came in on Yelp last night. 2 stars. He read. The food was fine. The staff was kind. But I was here about a year ago and I got very sick afterward. I don't know if I can fully trust this place again. I came back last night because I wanted to try. I'm still deciding how I feel." He lowered the phone. "That person came back. After everything that happened here, they chose to give us a chance. That is not a bad review. That is someone telling us exactly what we need to earn. Not 5 stars. Just their trust, one visit at a time." He set the phone down. "That's the job. Let's go do it." Keanu paid his bill, left a generous tip, and walked out without saying anything to anyone. That afternoon, he drove south. Dale Mercer lived on the south side in a neighborhood of small frame houses where people left porch lights on at night as a matter of habit. Keanu parked at the curb with a white box on the passenger seat. Caden had made the pot pie that morning. Temperature checked 3 times. Every ingredient logged. Rona Mercer answered the door. Steady eyes. She looked at Keanu, then at the box and did not move. He introduced himself, apologized for coming without calling, said he hoped to speak with her husband. She looked at him for a long moment, then stepped back. Dale was in the living room in an armchair by the window, broad through the shoulders in the way of someone who had done physical work for 30 years. On the side table, half under the newspaper, a medical billing folder. Itemized. Impersonal. "I know who you are," Dale said. "I've been following the news." Keanu sat across from him. "Then you know what happened. And you know it happened on my watch in my restaurant, to you." He set the box on the coffee table. "I'm not here to hand you anything official. I'm here because I should have been here months ago, and I wasn't, and I'm sorry." "What is that?"
Pot beer.
"Made this morning by the man who runs my kitchen now. He checked the temperature himself before I left." A pause. "You don't have to eat it. I brought it because I didn't know another way to show you what we've become." Rona stood in the doorway between rooms, arms loosely crossed. 11 days, Dale said. "Not an accusation. A fact with its own weight. I do electrical work. I don't get paid if I don't show up." He looked at the folder. "My wife covered the bills. We don't talk about what that cost her." "I know. The settlement covers those days and the medical expenses. But that's not why I'm here." He looked at Dale directly. "You came to a restaurant that was supposed to take care of you, and it didn't. The money doesn't fix that part." Dale was quiet. The afternoon light moved slowly across the floor. "My wife reads every health inspection report before we go anywhere new now," he said finally. "I spent 30 years trusting that when you sit down somewhere and order food, the people making it are doing right by you." He turned the box in his hands. "That's a hard thing to get back." "I know, and I can't give it back to you. All I can tell you is that the person who made that pie thought about you when he made it. Not as a case number. As the person it was going to." Dale looked at his wife. She gave a small, almost imperceptible nod, the kind that carries 30 years of shared history. He opened the box. The smell of rosemary and butter moved through the room. He cut into the crust, took a small bite, chewed slowly, set the fork down. "That's good," he said quietly. The words came out with reluctant honesty, as though he had been prepared to feel less. "That's genuinely good." Rona turned toward the kitchen. Not before Keanu saw her face. He looked out the window at the ordinary street. A neighbor raking leaves, a dog on the sidewalk, the unhurried rhythm of a Thursday afternoon. He thought about a room he had rented for $400 a month before anyone knew his name. A shared bathroom, the same 4 meals in rotation. He had carried plates to people who did not see him. He understood eventually that the invisibility was not personal. It was structural. A system that had quietly decided some people's dignity was negotiable. He had not built a different kind of place the first time around. He had trusted the right-looking numbers and let 16 months pass. That failure was his as much as anyone's. He stayed for another hour. When he left, Dale walked him to the door and shook his hand at the threshold, firm, straightforward, between 2 people who had managed to be honest with each other. "Tell your cook it was good," Dale said. "He'll be glad to hear it." He called Caden from the parking lot. "He ate it." Said to tell you it was good. A brief silence. Then, that means a lot. Steady voice. Only just. The following week, Keanu stood outside the Elmwood location without notes and made 2 announcements. Resolution reached with all 31 identified victims. Full medical coverage, documented acknowledgement, individual conversations for anyone who wanted one. And the establishment of the Hearth and Table Foundation, free legal representation for food service workers and customers harmed by unsafe practices who lacked the resources to pursue claims independently. First operating budget from his personal funds. A reporter asked what he wanted people to take from what had happened. Gareth Sloan was not someone who woke up one morning and decided to cause harm. He was someone who had learned to measure his own value entirely in performance numbers, and had decided that people with less money deserved less care. That thinking came from a system that rewards results without asking how they were produced. The answer is people willing to ask the questions the system isn't asking. People like the young man who sent me an email at 11 o'clock at night because he thought someone ought to know. He did not say Caden's name. He had asked permission first. That preference was respected without comment. That evening he stopped by the kitchen. Caden was doing the final inventory check, moving through the shelves with the efficiency of someone who understands the end-of-day work matters as much as anything during service. Keanu leaned against the doorframe and watched. Clean kitchen, open shelving, cameras in their corners, everything exactly as it was supposed to be. Good week? He asked. Caden looked up.
No incidents.
Every temperature logged. 2 compliments through the feedback form. A pause. And Marcus didn't drop anything today. High bar, Keanu said. Caden smiled briefly at the clipboard. He's getting there. Keanu took out his phone and photographed the kitchen. Not anything particular, just the room as it was in that moment.
Lee.
Quiet. In order. He looked at it for a second. Put the phone away. Did not post it. It was not for anyone else. Go home, he said. You've done enough for 1 week. So have you, Caden said. He turned off the light and walked out through the back. The alley was cold and still. Down the block, a restaurant was still open. Music and voices thin in the night air. Chicago doing what Chicago does. He stood there for a moment with his hands in his pockets. The work was not finished. There would always be another location to check, another system to audit, another person somewhere not yet being seen. But tonight, this kitchen was safe. The people in it knew their voices had somewhere to go. The people who would sit down tomorrow would be cared for without qualification or condition. That was not everything, but it was enough to build on. I've covered a lot of stories. What stays with me about this one isn't the metal shard on the ceramic rim. It isn't the handcuffs in the hallway. It's a young man at 11 o'clock at night, typing an email to an address he wasn't sure anyone was reading. No plan, no protection, just the decision that his own comfort wasn't a good enough reason to stay quiet. Gareth Sloan counted on the silence around him. He built 16 months of deliberate harm on the reasonable expectation that people would keep their heads down. Wendell Foss had the same information and chose to be paid for his silence. Their outcomes were different, but not in the nature of the choice. Caden made a different one. It cost him weeks of fear and the real possibility of losing a job he needed. And it changed everything. Dale Mercer sat in an armchair on a Thursday afternoon and ate a pot pie made by someone who thought about him when he made it. 31 people who had been quietly hurt had someone in their corner who hadn't been there before. And a kitchen built on fear became, through the effort of imperfect people making difficult choices, something closer to what it was always supposed to be. None of it happened by accident. All of it started with an email. Every person who walks through a restaurant door and sits down is trusting someone they've never met with something that matters. They trust that the people behind that kitchen door are doing right by them, not because an inspector is due, not because someone important might be watching, just because they've decided that whoever sits down at that table deserves care. That trust is ordinary, fragile, and worth everything. The real measure of a place isn't what it does when the cameras are on. It's what it does at 5 in the morning, when the kitchen is empty and no one is there to see. Build the kind of place that deserves to be trusted at 5 in the morning. That's the whole job.